So there's an interesting story in The Hill and a bunch of other publications talking about how Joe Biden has failed to consolidate the Bernie Sanders base behind his campaign, and how if he wants to win in November, he needs to do that. This piece notes that while a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters are saying they're going to vote for Joe, there's a lot of them that aren't, and even those that say they are planning to vote for Biden aren't at all enthusiastic about it. And that means that they might not be the type of person that will 100% actually get out to the polls in November, and they certainly won't be the sort of people to knock on doors, to make phone calls, to put up lawn signs, to donate their few extra dollars at the end of the month. All the things you need to win really close elections, and all the things that they did for Bernie Sanders. All that volunteer work, the donations, all of the, extra little bits of effort beyond just saying, I support a candidate. And I think that the Biden campaign, despite making some small efforts, hasn't done what it's clearly going to take to win over Bernie people. Now, I think there's going to be some Bernie people that will not go with Biden. I think the Tara Reade story alone has meant that a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters will not back Joe Biden. They can't support Donald Trump or Joe Biden given their record of how they've involved themselves with women in subordinate positions to them. And that simple reality can't be washed away for some Bernie Sanders supporters. But if you put that aside, and I'm not saying you should, but if you do put it aside, Biden needs to fundamentally commit to the core policies that Bernie Sanders ran on. It's not even really about Bernie. A lot of people outside the Bernie movement misunderstood what the Bernie Sanders movement really was. There was this narrative, I'm sure that you guys saw it during the campaign, where people would call us a cult, that we were the Bernie Sanders cult, we were the Bernie bro cult, and that no matter what Bernie Sanders did, we would do it uncritically. We would follow him uncritically. If he told us to jump off a bridge, you'd see millions of Bernie bros jumping off bridges. But that's not the case. What we've seen is that a lot of people give real credence to what Bernie Sanders says, but the movement was never just about him. Of course, it was Bernie who said, "Not me, us. I'm a part of this movement," but the movement is not just about getting Bernie to the White House. It's not just about getting Bernie in this one particular office. It's about transforming the social, political, and economic reality of the United States and really the world. And that's what the Not Me, Us movement was about. And so, now that Bernie has suspended his campaign, he's endorsed Biden, and he's implored his supporters to go with Biden, and he's even worked with Biden to set up task forces that include some progressives. They include Pramila Jayapal and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and many others. People just assume, well, Joe Biden's done all he needs to do. He's meaningfully incorporated Bernie Sanders into his campaign, certainly more than Hillary Clinton ever did. And I think that's probably a fair claim to make. Like Biden or hate him, and I'm probably more on the hate Biden camp, the fact is he's done more than Clinton ever did to reach out to Bernie Sanders. You can think it's disingenuous, but he did it. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people assume Biden's done it. Now the people that are in the Bernie camp, the Bernie Sanders movement, now they have no reason to oppose Biden. But the fact is, we were with Bernie more because we liked the policies than the guy himself. At least most of us. And so these task forces, they're not enough. It's not enough to simply have a task force where the left has to beg for scraps from the Biden campaign. It's not enough to simply have Bernie Sanders say, "I think you should vote for Joe Biden. Joe's a decent man." It's not enough to say that, good people, legitimately good people, are on these task forces. Therefore, Biden's reaching out to the left. We need steadfast commitments. Because again, it's not about Bernie. It's not just about, hey, Bernie Sanders said do this, and therefore we're going to do this. Bernie from 4 years ago made it extremely clear that he is going to endorse the presumptive nominee. He endorsed Hillary Clinton. And that he's going to ask his supporters to go with Hillary and go with Biden. But ultimately, the decision from those supporters is their own. And the responsibility about bringing those supporters along rests with the actual candidate and their campaign and their platform and their worldview and their philosophy. Bernie can only do so much because, as Bernie has said multiple times, again, it's not about Bernie, and this isn't a cult, and he will not dictate to his supporters. He can't control them, and he's not really going to try to control them. And so we need to actually see real commitment, Medicare for all, and a Green New Deal. If Biden can meaningfully implement those policies into his platform, he will win over the vast majority of Bernie Sanders supporters. Some of them won't go with him because they don't trust him. Some of them won't go with him because of Tara Reade, but he will win over the vast majority of Bernie people. And the people that are with him right now but are unenthusiastic might well gain a bit of enthusiasm. And there's been reports from Bernie Sanders people, but also from folks outside the Bernie movement, at least directly, saying Biden's got 3 weak points: young people, progressives, and Latinos. And those were all groups that Bernie Sanders dominated with in the election. Bernie did very well. It's the reason he had such a big victory in Nevada. It's a reason why even in states where Bernie lost quite heavily, he was winning people under 30, under 40, sometimes under 45. It's a reason why people who identified as on the left were almost always with Bernie Sanders and almost never with Joe Biden, at least when the primaries were competitive, before Super Tuesday. That's the fact here. Joe Biden needs to reach those people, and getting Bernie alone is never going to be enough. And I think this is a lesson the Biden wing, the corporate Democrat wing, the institutional mainstream media wing, they don't get it. They assumed we were a Borg. They assumed that we would just follow Bernie no matter what. And the truth is, folks need more. They need more. Now, Biden has a choice to make. Biden might well say, I don't want to make those policy decisions. I am serving my corporate masters, and I am a dutiful servant to my corporate masters, and I will not back a Green New Deal or Medicare for all, even if it helps me win. Or Biden might say, look, I could back these policies, but I feel, and he could be wrong, I think he is, that if I do that, I'll gain progressives, but I'll lose more moderates. It's better for me to, not count on progressives and hope they vote for me and, focus instead on winning, wealthy, upper middle class, suburban white women, with college degrees. The people who often voted Republican, but are becoming more and more Democrat. And I want to focus on getting those people to vote and vote for me. But if he makes that choice, then he cannot blame progressives for not voting for him. He can't make that move. So, to sum, what I'm trying to say is Bernie Sanders has endorsed Joe Biden, and there's been a lot of institutional intermingling with the task forces and all of this and all of that, and all of the Bernie live streams where he's talking about Biden and each and every one. But the Bernie movement is very different than Bernie Sanders. And if Biden wants the latter, it needs to be about more than just having the former tell his supporters what to do. Bring us Medicare for all and a Green New Deal, and people will move behind you. If you don't bring that, then forget about getting the left, and it could cost you in November.